time ago. I'd rather be epic all by myself than to have a bunch of friends that aren't taking me in a positive direction. So I'm glad you're learning that. And sometimes those lessons come in a tough way to handle, you know, but they're immensely valuable to have. All right, Marissa, put happiness in your own hands, not in material things of people, because you will always be on a roller coaster of emotion. So good, so good. There's a book by the title, Happiness is an Inside Job. I encourage you all to read that. It talks about that premise a lot. There's one of my favorite verses in the Bible is, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What are you putting your faith in? What are you putting all your value in? Because that's what's going to determine how you feel. If you put your value in the right things, you get to live a life of peace and purpose. But if you put them in the wrong things, you're absolutely right. You're just on that roller coaster. All right, Chloe, just wanted to say these are all great lessons, you guys, and you are teaching me a lot. Keep up the great work. Isn't this amazing? Isn't this amazing? You're learning from each other right now. And these lessons were already in you, but just by talking about them in this context, you're learning things from one another. Never underestimate the power of collaboration and communication. Don't assume that just because you know someone or you're in the same group with someone that you know everything about them. You always have valuable things to learn from one another. All you got to do is ask. I learned that you can just manifest things to come true. You have to work for them as well. Absolutely, absolutely. By what is it, Napoleon Hill in the book Think and Grow Rich talked about the concept of developing a clear mental picture of what it is you desire. And once you have a clear mental picture, you can then know how you want to focus your energy, and then you can structure your behavior in a way that moves you towards your goals. I love it. I learned writing scholarship essays is a process, not a goal. The more you apply to, the better you get at writing those essays. Answering scholarship prompts help you clarify what your goals and aspirations are. That is so good. So insightful. Y'all are teaching me tonight. This is great. This is fantastic. I love how you say it's a process, and the more you apply, the better you get at it. One of the mistakes that people make about creativity is they look at it as if it's a success-oriented process rather than a discovery-oriented process. When you look at creative work as if it's only success-oriented, then you're afraid of failing, you're afraid of getting things wrong, you're afraid of not being perfect. It's one big tragedy if you don't create a masterpiece or you don't get everything right. And that's a terrible way to go about things, because you don't learn that way. When you look at it as a discovery-oriented process, you say, I'm gonna do the work, not because I'm gonna get it right, I'm gonna do the work because I'm gonna discover the best way to do it by getting involved in the process. So this is a really valuable lesson. There was a story about an art teacher who divided the class into two groups as an experiment. And one class was graded just on how many works of art they did, like how many drawings they did, no matter how bad it was. The more drawings they did, the better grade they got. The other class, they got graded on the quality of the drawings. And so the first group, they just drew a whole bunch of pictures because they wanted to, get a good grade. The other group, they spent all their time thinking about the perfect way to do one picture. Guess which group showed more artistic development over time? It was the group that just kept doing it, no matter how bad it was, because the more you do it, the better that you get. So don't deify failure. Don't build up failure into this big dramatic thing. Failure is how you learn. Making mistakes is how you learn. And you're absolutely right. The more you do anything, the better that you get. The more you do anything, the better you get at everything. Because the more you do anything, the better that you get at that thing, but the more confident you get in your ability to learn, and that transfers to everything. All right. I learned to speak less than what you think. Absolutely. Absolutely. Such a valuable skill. And sometimes we're tempted to do a lot of talking because we want to show people what we know. We want to impress them with our intelligence or things along those lines. But sometimes you say the most powerful things by being silent. Have the courage to speak up. Have the discernment when to know it's not your turn. I was just thinking about that verse. Oh, awesome, Jada. I'm glad you like that verse too. I love to hear what you think about it as well. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I do get to them eventually. I learned my values lie in family. I love that. I love that. You know, there's a lot of talk today about how do we change the system? How do we change the government? How do we change the world? But the best way to change the world is to realize that every relationship is a part of the world. The world isn't some kind of abstraction, right? You focus on the things within your locus of control, in your family, that's right there in your immediate vicinity. And, you know, it was Maya Angelou who said, you know, sometimes what we'll do is we'll treat the people at our jobs or at school with kindness, and then we come home and we're terrible to our families. Be good to the people in your family. That's how you change the world. Start there. It may be stereotypical, but all that is, let's see, all that is gilded is not gold. Not everything that seems good is good. You need to make sure you understand the situation before you make assumptions. I love that. I love that. Immensely valuable lesson. And, you know, yeah, it is a stereotypical lesson, but it's still valuable. You know, cliches are cliches for a reason. And, you know, I had a philosophy professor tell me years ago, he says, value getting it right more than you value being original. There's a lot of pressure on us to say what's never been said, to do what's never been done. And that's all good, you know, but originality is an extension of authenticity. Focus on the truth, and over time, you will express it in a way that is unique to who you are. So never be afraid of those lessons that are typical and cliche, because what's cliche for one person is an epiphany for another. As long as it's valuable, as long as it's changing your life and making you better. Can you repeat the name of the book again? Happiness is an Inside Job. And Nellie had my back. Thank you, Nellie. I learned the importance application of proactivity in both my life and in interacting with others. I love it. Taking initiative. Taking initiative is so powerful. Entrepreneurs and economists refer to that as permissionless innovation, looking for opportunities to just make a difference without waiting on a sign from the heavens that it's okay to help someone else. Lastly, we have Heidi here. Instead of working to impress everyone first, impress yourself. Oh, such mature insights. That's so good. You know, it's great to work hard for nice things, but you can't enjoy the things you work hard for if you give up your who you really are in the process of pursuing those things. And what's the point of having everybody like you, but you hate yourself? You know, you want to like yourself. You want to like the person that you're becoming as you're going after things in life. And that's a very important one. That's a very important one. This is so awesome. Thank you all for sharing this. I hope you have learned from one another as much as I've learned from you. Let me get one more in, Madison. I love the movie It's a Wonderful Life because it shows how much someone can have an impact on the people around them, even if they don't know it. Right on, right on. This is the age of social media. When I was your age, I didn't have all of these social media tools that y'all have. And so I didn't have the ability to compare myself with other people in the way that you have. And so I think today there's a lot of emphasis on being an influencer, you know, how many followers I get, how much status I have, but the real power is in making an impact. And that's what I love about It's a Wonderful Life. You know, it's about making an impact rather than trying to be an influencer. Being an influencer is about status, but that comes with the territory. Make an impact. How can you make a difference in other people's lives? And you don't have to be famous for that. And you can do that with so many little things. This is really awesome. I encourage you to do this with each other and to do this even by yourself, to write down what you learn. We talked about Neil deGrasse Tyson in a previous one. One of the things he says is that it is his life goal to make sure that he's a little bit smarter each day than a previous version of himself. If you just get 1% smarter every single day, you'll be amazed at what the principle of compound interest looks like in your life when it's applied to knowledge. And one of the keys to learning every day is not only reading and listening and thinking, but it's also practicing the art of being mindful of how life is giving us lessons every single moment. So the more you do an exercise like this by writing down the things you learned today, you begin to develop a habit of looking for the lessons in life. And then you begin to pick up on them more and more. I often have had people ask me, Hey, how do you come up with stories? Well, you look for them. Life gives you stories. There's a story happening every moment. There's a story happening right now, but you have to practice seeing it. And whatever you practice, you get better at. If you practice complaining all the time, you'll become a really good complainer. I can put you in any situation, you'll find something wrong with it. There is literally no such thing as a situation that's so amazing that you couldn't find something to complain about. The same thing is with gratitude. If you look for something to be grateful for, no matter how bad the situation is, you'll find it. That's true of everything, and that's also true of life lessons. So it's one of the best ways to get smarter, develop that habit of looking at the lessons that life is handing you. This is the last one I'm going to read, and then I'll go in on integrity. I honestly realize that life is not a piece of cake. It is the steps that truly matter. Absolutely. We talked about the guy last week who wanted to go to the other place and found out that he actually wasn't the other place. The greatest source of joy in life is our ability to participate in the process of creating the things that matter most to us. When I was a kid, this is way, way old school. When I was a kid, there was a show, I Dream of Jeannie, and it was about a lady who could just, like blink her eyes and then something would instantaneously manifest. And I thought, wow, that's gotta be the life, right? If I want something, if I need friends, if I want money, if I want a new toy, if I could just blink my eyes and it manifests, that'd be so amazing. But that would be such a depressing life. It'd be such a depressing life because consumption alone cannot not satisfy us. As human beings, we are creative and we aren't satisfied until we can actually be involved in the process of making things happen. Oh man, these are so many good things. Here's what I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to give you four corners. I'll call these the four corners of integrity. There's so many things that we can say about integrity, but I've got to distill these lessons into small chunks. And I'm going to give you four things, and then we're going to go into some time for Q&A. So I'm going to give you my four. Number one, integrity is treating people with respect, no matter who they are and no matter what other people say or think about them. I remember working at a restaurant one time, and there was a customer who had a reputation for being particularly difficult. I never served this customer before, but here's how I found out about them. One day, the hostess comes up to me and says, TK, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, but I had to sit this customer in your section, and this person is a censor. I can't even say it. And all the other servers were kind of like, yeah, man, good luck with this customer, good luck. And everybody was prepared for a negative experience. And I got a little tense in my shoulders and I'm like, oh man, like, why did I get this bad luck to have to deal with this customer? But I pulled myself together and I said, you know what? Your story doesn't have to be everyone else's story. Your experience doesn't have to be everyone else's experience. Let's not treat this person based on what other people said about them. Even though these people are your friends and they may be sincere, you have the power to create a different experience. You have the power to process your own experiences in a different way. And everybody deserves a chance to do the right thing. I greeted that customer with respect and kindness, just like anybody else. They were nice to me. Everything was going well. They ordered their food. When it was time to bring the food, I brought it there. And then I did what I call a 2-bite check back, where I just circulate really quickly and come back just to make sure everything's tasting fine, everything came out fine. When I did my 2-bite check back, that customer was irate. And that customer, just really gave me the business about it. And said, this food isn't prepared properly. I ordered it this way. It is not like that at all. I said, I'm terribly sorry. I'll make sure I fix it right away. I removed the plate. I went to the kitchen. I explained to them the problem. Everybody started laughing. We told you, and they saw that I was going to try to approach this thing with a positive mindset. So they had a real good time with me. Okay, Mr. Positive, we told you that's how she was. And I still said, you know what? I'm going to treat this like I would any other customer that complained about the meal, because she's not the first customer to complain about a meal. I'm just all hyped up about it right now because they prepared me to be hyped up about it. I'm going to play it cool. So when we got everything together, I brought it to this person's table, and I apologized again. I delivered the food, and then I took it one step further. I said, you know what? I'm going to make sure that I cover your meal today because you deserve better. And then I went around, did my business. I came back. The lady said to me, hey, what do you do? I don't mean what's your job. Like, what do you want to do? What's your dream? And we began to talk. She turned out to be a super nice person. I can't say specifically what she did because I don't want to give any identifiers, but turns out this person was a very successful executive. This woman went on to become a mentor of mine. And she said, I want to help you out. And she would give me valuable advice about business and became a very valuable influence in my life. Now, every story doesn't turn out that way. You don't always get lucky to meet somebody that's a wealthy or successful business executive. But the moral of that story is that life presents us with many temptations to treat people differently because of the way they look, because of the way they dress, because of what other people say about them, and a host of other reasons. But integrity is when you choose how you're going to treat people based on principle, not based on circumstance. Because circumstance is always fluctuating. It's always changing. But integrity says, I'm going to do right by people no matter what. Now that's different from, self-defense and self-protection. If someone is trying to hurt you, trying to harm you, trying to do wrong by you, by all means, do what you got to do to get yourself out of that situation and make sure you're safe. But in a situation where you're serving someone, or you have the opportunity to help someone or befriend someone, don't judge people by what other folks say about them, including your friends. Judge people on an individual basis based on how you experience them, because you'll often find that the way you experience people can be so different if you approach it with an open mind. And this not only applies to a job that you have, it also applies even in situations with your peers. There are always going to be people that seem like they're more valuable to be friends with, because if I'm friends with that person, everybody will respect me more. People will like me more. This person over here can do more for me. That person over there, that's kind of like the nerd. That's kind of like the loser. That's kind of like the outcast. Nobody likes them. Integrity doesn't play those games. Integrity understands that everybody has value. And just because other people don't see the value in that person, just because they don't see the value in that person, doesn't mean that person doesn't have value. I remember I spoke at a university in Chicago. This was like 3 years ago. And there was a section where everybody was, and there was this one kid that was just sitting by himself. And nobody was talking to this guy the whole event. And I went up to him and I started talking to him. And this guy was super interesting, super smart, was involved in all kinds of creative projects, but he was just shy. He was just shy. It wasn't his fault. He hadn't developed the ability to learn how to approach people and start a conversation. And I helped him out in that direction, and I introduced him to some people. But the thing that struck me the most is like, man, why did I have to do that? Why did the person in the teaching position have to bring this kid over to some of the other students and introduce them and encourage them to mingle? In that popular group, there were very confident kids. There were very popular students who had the power to go up to that guy and say, hey man, how's it going? And they could have brought that guy over and they could have introduced him and made that guy cool in the eyes of other people just through the process of conferred credibility, but no one did it. And there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity there. It's not just about being nice. It's about giving yourself the chance to be impacted by human beings because you don't underestimate them. You don't judge people by superficial things. You treat people with respect, with kindness, with generosity, with dignity, no matter who they are, no matter where they come from. That's integrity. Number 2, integrity is capable of accepting constructive criticism, even when it's hard to hear. Give you another restaurant story. I was serving this one guy and he ordered a beer, and I brought out his bottle and a glass. And the glasses, we keep the glasses in the refrigerator, so the glasses are nice and cold. And after he finishes that, he says to me, I'd like to have another beer. And I go, you got it. I ring it in, I go to the bar, I pick up the bottle, I bring the bottle, and I sit it at his table. He looks at me like I was completely out of my mind. And he says, when someone orders a second beer, you don't just bring them a bottle, you bring the glass too. I mean, this guy was mad. This guy was irate. What I wanted to say was, man, bro, you ain't gotta yell at me over a glass. You need a glass, just ask me. But I didn't. I exercised self-control and I listened to him and I let him finish. And I said, I'm so sorry, but I thank you for giving me that feedback. I'll do better next time. Let me go get you a glass right away. I went and got a glass from the bar. I brought it to him. When I sat the glass down, he said to me, hey, I like you. You're my kind of guy. And then me and that guy ended up talking. And that guy ended up being a regular at my restaurant. Whenever he would come, he would request to sit in my section. And we had a positive time every single time. No, he didn't become like my best buddy or a mentor. He didn't donate money to my business or anything like that. But he was a very enjoyable customer for me, always tipped me well, was never mad at me again. And it's an example of how integrity is about exercising composure and self-control when you are being criticized. Sometimes you just get things wrong. Sometimes you make mistakes. And when people point them out, it never feels good. But if you listen and you listen non-defensively and you just take the L, just take the L. Don't treat the criticism as if, oh, if I admit that I was wrong, no one will ever like me or respect me again. So many people do that. They don't want to admit that they're wrong because they're afraid, well, if I admit that I'm wrong, people are going to think I'm incompetent. They're never going to respect me again. And it's the complete opposite. It's the complete opposite. If you never admit you're wrong, they'll never trust you again because they'll think, oh, I don't want to follow this person's lead. I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm affected by this person's behavior because they never admit when they're wrong, which means they're never going to learn. They're never going to get better. They're not incentivized to do the right thing. But when you say, yeah, absolutely, I appreciate that feedback. Let me take care of it right away. You find that you not only learn, but the conflict diffuses right away. There are so many conflicts in life that just go on and on and on because we feed energy into the conflict by just debating people. But it's like a game of tug of war. It takes two people to pull on that rope from opposite ends. What happens if you let go of your side of the rope? The game's over. You can't have tug of war unless both sides are pulling. So a lot of times it feels like people are just pulling us into debate and conflict. Let go of that rope. Be non-defensive. Don't have ego about it. Just listen and just learn. And the conflict's over. You get better. And that other person calms down. Because when there's nothing to fight with, what is there to do? Number three. It's about integrity. Integrity is about uplifting the group rather than making yourself look like a superstar. I remember I was in a play once and I had a small role. And I was in this scene where the two lead characters were center stage and they're having dialogue. And the scene is located in a library and I'm in the background and I'm cleaning the tables in the library. And I remember I thought, oh, I'm gonna really get some attention here. I'm gonna be super creative and I'm gonna, I'm gonna do all sorts of interesting things when I'm cleaning this table. And so, I would take the rag that I had and I would throw it behind my back and I would catch it, do it between my legs like a basketball, and then I'd start cleaning. And the audience started to laugh. They thought it was really funny. My director pulled me aside afterwards and said, hey, look, I like that you're bringing creativity to the role. Continue to do that. But here's the thing, because the audience was busy laughing at you and all that stuff, they didn't hear the dialogue between the two people that were center stage. Guess what? They can't understand what's going to happen next. When you're creative, be creative in a way that enhances the story, not in a way that takes away from the story. I want you to continue to be creative, but be creative in a way that supports everybody, not just yourself. It's easy when you think about leadership to think about everything in terms of getting ahead, everything in terms of standing out and being a superstar. But one of the themes I've touched on every single time is the real power, the real glory, the real rewards. It flows in the direction of lifting everyone up and being creative in a way that is a blessing and a benefit to others. Here's my fourth one. Integrity is about knowing what you stand for. I was just in Nashville, Tennessee last week, and I had a chance to hear Dave Ramsey speak. If you don't know who that is, look him up. He's one of the brilliant minds and influencers of our generation. He's the author of the Financial Peace series, has done a lot of great work in helping people get out of debt and taking charge of their lives by becoming more financially literate. He talked about early on in his career, there was a radio show that offered him the chance for a lot of exposure. And they said to him, you know, we'd love to make a deal with you, but we've noticed that sometimes when you talk, you like to quote scriptures and things like that. If you can just take the religion out of it. And he thought about that. He was like, first of all, if I made that promise, I don't even know if I'm capable of keeping it because that's such a part of me. How can I not quote scriptures? But then he thought, if I did say yes to that and I were able to keep that promise, I wouldn't be at peace with myself. I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the eye every day. And so he thanked him for the opportunity, but told him that he wouldn't be able to do it. He'd have to pass. And that turned out to be one of the most profitable decisions he'd ever make, not just in terms of money, but in terms of setting the tone for how he would live his life and what he would say yes to and what he would say no to going forward. And one of the main reasons he's such a popular and successful voice in the world of finance today is because people love the way that he integrates it with spirituality and integrity and character development. It turns out the very thing that one radio station wanted him to get rid of was the very thing that people would love the most about his mission. And so we live in a world where we do have to make compromises, but it's important to understand that your compromises don't mean anything if there isn't anything about you that you're not willing to compromise. It's good to be ambitious. It's good to say yes to as many opportunities as possible, but it's also important to understand, what am I willing to say no for? What am I willing to turn down fame and popularity for? What am I willing to turn down money for or anything else for? Friendship for? It's important to have those nice things, but it's most important to have your integrity. And those are the 4 corners of integrity. I'm going to pause here because we've got roughly about 15 minutes, and I want to now move into Q&A. As I have said before, feel free to ask me about anything that we talked about or anything that we didn't talk about. There's something that you're struggling with, something that you like insight or context on. This is your time. Someone says in the chat, may I suggest Jordan Peterson? He's very amazing. By the way, you know, maybe next time I'll just like recommend a bunch of great books for you all to check out. Yes, so Jordan Peterson has a book, 12 Rules for Living, that I think does contain a lot of great insight. Yeah, I recommend it. I recommend it. He's got a lot of talks on YouTube as well that you can check out if you don't want to have to wait on ordering a book. Okay, gotta leave. I enjoyed today's session so much. Thank you for teaching us about integrity. Take care. Francesca, thanks for stopping by. Okay, here's a question in here with Jada. Is lifting up the people around three? Oh, okay. So this is a review of the 4. What was 3 and 4? Yes. Number 3 is about lifting up the people around you. And 4 is the integrity, knowing what you stand for. All right, let me check out the Q&A tab. Yes, I will put together a recommended reading list. As a matter of fact, let me just go off the cuff with a few book recommendations that I think would be useful. And then when I have time to think about it, I can come up with something that's a little bit more involved. So one book is by Cal Newport, C-A-L-N-E-W-P-O-R-T. And it is called So Good They Can't Ignore You. It's based on the words of the comedian Steve Martin, whose advice for success was to be so good that they can't ignore you. And this is not only a book about the development of skill, but it has a lot of very counterintuitive but immensely valuable things to say about the whole follow your passion movement. Passion is good, But without the ability to develop useful skills and create value for other people in ways that they care about, your passion isn't going to take you anywhere. And he says a lot of valuable stuff about that and shares with you some really great things about how to develop useful skills. So that's one. Cal Newport, so good, they can't ignore you. All right. All right, I'll go with Michael Ellsberg, The Last Safe Investment. And he talks about the idea of approaching your own life as if you are a business, right? And the value that can come from thinking of yourself as like the business or the stock that you need to invest in. At this age, it is so immensely valuable. He also has another book called The Education of Millionaires, and that's a really good one as well. But his name is Michael Ellsberg, The Last Safe Investment, and The Education of Millionaires. Now, I'm going to recommend one with a cheesy title. A lot of people laugh at, but I'm telling you, read this book. It's going to help you so much with dealing with people. Very popular book. It's Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think if you look past the title, which sounds funny, I know, but you put the practices that he talks about into application in your life, you will find that you will be able to resolve conflicts that just get other people wrapped up and entangled in all sorts of unnecessary drama. And you'll find that you'll have a much easier time winning people over and getting them on your side. So those are three. I'll recommend Robert Greene's Mastery. Now, Robert Greene is most known for a book called The 48 Laws of Power. And that's a very interesting book. It's a very detailed book, very long, but this is one that I recommend starting with because mastery is about, it teaches you a lot of valuable things about finding mentors. It teaches you a lot of valuable things about knowing what skills to develop. It also gives you an honest look at what it takes to create success in any area of life. All right, 1 second. I will recommend 2 more for now, and then I'll put together a list later. Nathaniel Branden's The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. I think it's a very balanced take on what self-esteem is and what it is not and how to develop it. And his concept of self-esteem is so much bigger than just telling yourself that you're awesome. It's also about challenging yourself to actually become awesome in areas that you're not. And then Seth Godin, a mentor of mine. I love Seth Godin. This is called Linchpin. And Linchpin is really, it's about approaching life itself, if you will, as a kind of art and learning how to bring a spirit of creativity to everything that you do. So those are ones that I'll recommend for now. Robert Greene's Mastery, Michael Ellsberg's The Last Safe Investment and Education of Millionaires, Cal Newport's So Good They Can't Ignore You, Seth Godin's Linchpin. I think that's, oh, and Nathaniel Branden's 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. Let me go into this Q&A. All right. What are some of the best and worst advice you were ever given for life in general, for entrepreneurship? Best and worst advice. All right. Best advice comes from Peter Daniels, who said, over the course of your lifetime, read 1,000 biographies, because in doing so, you will build a vast vocabulary for overcoming incredible odds. Let me repeat that. Let me talk about what he meant. Over the course of your lifetime, read 1,000 biographies, because in doing so, you will build a vast vocabulary for overcoming incredible odds. Best advice I've ever received, and I'll tell you why. What Peter Daniels was teaching was that life is like a story, and your ability to effectively navigate the hero's journey comes from your capacity to contextualize your story, your capacity to give meaning to the things that happen to you and the things that you go through. And when you study the stories of other people, the better you get at being able to make sense out of your own life, especially when your stories are diverse and they cover a wide range of people from different careers, different fields, different backgrounds. I'll recommend a book if you want to consume a lot of biographies in a relatively short period of time without having to just like read complete books. It's a great starting point. It's a book by Marlo Thomas called The Right Words at the Right Time. And she's got bios from all sorts of people in entertainment, in business, in politics, the arts, and so forth. But you are going to have moments in life that just don't seem to make sense, or moments in life that are really hard to wrap your mind around. And when those moments come, it helps to know lots and lots of stories of real human beings who kind of dealt with similar or the same types of problems. Because one of the most discouraging sensations is when you go through something and you suffer under the illusion, like, ah, man, I'm the only one who's ever had this thought. I'm the only one that's ever felt this way. I'm the only one that struggled with this. Everybody else just gets it. And it's amazing how we tend to think that about anything. Everybody else just gets it. Nobody else. I remember I did some coaching for a school, and I talked to about 30 different students. Every single one of those students expressed a similar struggle, and they all said, I bet nobody else, struggles with this. Everybody else is just always having a good time. Having a vocabulary of stories helps you with that tremendously. Worst piece of advice? Oh my. I think it was when you're looking to build your career, focus on what pays the most, or focus on, what offers you financial security. I think you should think about the money. I'm very big on that. I'm very big on thinking about the money. But I think if you start with money, you are at risk of becoming a boring, irreplaceable person. A boring, replaceable person. You're going to become boring because you're doing things that don't fire you up, and you're not bringing enthusiasm and creativity to your work when you're not fired up by things. You tend to be more creative when you actually enjoy what you do. And you're likely to be replaceable because when you're just doing something because you think the money's good and you're just kind of like doing what it takes to make the money, you'll almost always be outcompeted by the people that are just like fired up and energized by that. And it doesn't even feel like work to them. They'll almost always be more interesting to you, always be more likable than you. They'll almost always be more dedicated than you. You want to think about the money, but you want to start with something that you actually can enjoy, that you actually believe in. Because commerce isn't just about money. It's also about conviction. And people respond to you based on your level of conviction. You never want to be in the business of selling a product when you think the product is stupid. Like sell something that you actually believe in. Sell something that fires you up, something that you actually can use in good conscience. You'll be more motivated to work hard for those types of things, and you'll be more likely to see creative ideas. Now, you can't just think about what you're interested in by itself, because nobody's going to give you $1 for being interested in something. They're only going to give you money if you can use what you're interested in to do something that they care about, but you want to start with what's interesting to you. And this idea of starting with money has been one of the worst pieces of advice I've ever received. In terms of uplifting others to help the group overall, what if someone has talents that would really help the overall product? How do you encourage them, but not forcefully, to get more involved? Okay, so one thing you want to do in a situation like that, if you see someone, they're not living up to their potential, they've got these abilities, but they're not using them, don't start with asking, how can I motivate them? Start by asking, what's demotivating them? Why is this person not getting involved? Make yourself a student of the person that you want to help before you try to help them. Because when you find out what people's resistance is, when you find out what their hang-up is, what their obstacle is, they will teach you how to help them. But you don't want to just bum rush people like, hey man, you need to work a little harder. You need to give me more. Hey, you're such a good XYZ, you need to do it more. Talk to them. Hey, I'm curious, how do you think everything is going right now? You know, like what do you think about the activity that we just did? How are you feeling about things? Do you feel like you want to be involved more? You want to be involved less? Do you feel good about the role that you're playing? If there was anything you could do besides what you're doing right now, is there anything? Hey, here's something that I think, just think about it, no pressure, just something to chew on for a little bit. I really love the way that you do A, B, C, X, Y, Z. And I think a lot of other people would benefit from it as well. But save that for last. You got to earn the right to teach people. You got to earn the right to coach people. There's a saying that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Show them that you care first by being interested in them. And then they're going to share with you some things that might help you know how you can best advise them. And you know what? You'll have their trust. You'll have their ear because you spent some time listening to them. All right, let's see what's here. What do you think the most important thing is to starting a business? I'm going to give you two things very quickly. Number one, having a problem to solve. To run a business means that you're solving some kind of problem. And by the way, when I say problem, I don't mean a problem to everybody. I just mean a problem to your customers. So even comedians solve problems. One of those problems is, we go to work, we live our lives, and we often feel stressed out by different things. And we need things to take our minds off of the day-to-day drama of life. And comedians solve that problem for us. They tell us jokes and stories that make us laugh at ourselves, that make us laugh at our problems, that make us not take everything so darn seriously all the time. That's a problem. What problem are you solving? You got to have an answer to that question. What problem are you solving? And the second thing is the willingness to start before you get answers to all your questions. Most people get hung up with like, oh, I got to have a detailed business plan. I got to have a contingency plan for this. You're going to do most of your learning by getting started. So even if that's not the multi-million-dollar version, what's the $2 version? What's the $20 version? Build some momentum because you're going to learn a lot by just trying things. How do you cope when you're put down and have to fight twice as hard for respect for being gay? All right, that's a good question. So the first thing, when people are putting you down, find a way to get away from those people. One of my favorite quotes is by Mike Murdoch, and the quote is, go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. Don't let anybody convince you that they are doing you a favor by being your friend. If someone doesn't respect your human dignity, they don't respect you for your character, they don't honor your individuality, get away from them as fast as you can. If you find yourself in an environment like school and you can't get away from them, and people are harassing you or psychologically or verbally abusing you, then make use of the authority figures that are present and use your voice. Tell a teacher, tell your HR manager, tell your boss. And it's not just for you, it's for the people who come after you. Sometimes we put up with things and we say, I can deal with it, whatever, I'm just gonna ignore it. Don't do that, because there's someone that's gonna come after you who's gonna have to put up with that same kind of nonsense, and maybe they can't handle it. By you being the person to use your voice and telling someone, making use of your allies, you can put to an end nonsensical practices that will adversely affect the people that come after you. So set a positive trend by using your voice to speak to the people that can do something about it, and get away from those people as fast as you can. Surround yourself with people who respect you for who you are and who build you up. Stay encouraged. All right, I'm gonna answer one more, but please look at the chat. Grace just posted a post-event survey. Please do me the favor of going into that survey and just taking a minute to fill that out for me. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna cover one more here. All right, let's see. All right. With that being said, so I got a lot of questions here, and I'm gonna save these. Grace, you can send these to me afterwards, and then I can, be able to try to answer more afterwards. But with that being said, would you recommend that people also consider learning about history? I'm a huge history enthusiast, and I found clearance within my inner self, knowing that one, I'm not the only one who has gone through such experiences, and two, having historical insights on how previous figures have dealt with similar situations. So a couple of things. One, yes, I believe you should study history. Malcolm X said that of all of our studies, history will most reward our research. Two, studying biography is history. Reading biographies is a part of history. It's the history of specific people that have impacted our world. The third thing I would say is history is really broad. And one way I do not recommend studying it is going to pick up some big history book just because someone said it's important and you should read history. That's not the best way to do it. The best way to do it is to start with something that you're actually curious about, because everything has a history. That's the most exciting thing about it. So if you're into the NBA has a history. The game of basketball existed before LeBron James and Steph Curry. You know, it has a history. People were playing the game before you were born. What was it like at that time? If you're into cars, it has a history. If you're into movies, it has a history. And here's the cool thing about starting in that way. When you study the history of subjects that you actually enjoy, two things are going to happen. You're going to learn really cool things that give you a newfound appreciation, not only for what you actually already enjoy, but for other things, because all knowledge is interconnected. But two, you're going to come away with questions and with insights that's going to make your interest broader. The more you learn, the more interested you become in other things. And it'll be impossible to follow your curiosities for long without finding yourself interested in just about everything. Because the more you learn, the more you realize that these subjects are kind of like, they're not literal. It's all knowledge and it's all connected. Everything is history and history is in everything. All right, we are at time. It has been so fun talking with you tonight. Thank you for being transparent and being open about your questions and about your feelings and about your thoughts. It's so cool to be a part of your journey. And I'm so proud of the work and effort that you're all putting in to make yourselves better. And I know sometimes things are tough, things are hard, but hang in there. There's a lot of reasons in the world to be afraid, to be angry, and to feel hopeless, but there are also a lot of reasons to feel optimistic. And I think you are one of those reasons. So don't let anybody tell you that you don't have the potential to make yourself better and that you don't have the potential to make the world around you better. Just be willing to start small and build momentum over time. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you for the finale next week.